Welcome to the second class of the new 12th lesson Discipleship series on 5 things about making disciples. This is our second lesson, and we are going to look at the considerations of discipleship. This morning we have a shorter class, and there will be half an hour of discussion. I really like this series because 12 lessons will give us ample time to go into the specifics of making disciples, to recap key points, and to consider applications and have discussions. And so to recap what went on last week, we asked the question, why do churches and Christian families die out? One of the key reasons is that we have not intentionally passed our faith to our children. Also, we have neglected to train our converts, our new disciples, to become teachers so that they can share their faith. I believe that the success of our next generation depends on how faithfully the church train members to share the gospel. By way of introduction, the dictionary defines a disciple as someone who follows another person and submits himself to the teaching of the leader or the way. In the Bible, which is written in Greek, the word disciple means a learner, one who accepts and follows the teaching of his teacher. When you go back to the early church, right from the beginning, Christians were called disciples. So, the emphasis is a Christian is a disciple. It's only later, in Acts chapter 11 and verse 26, that the disciples were called Christians. If you do a concordance search in the Bible, you'll find that the word disciple is used over 200 times. And if you search for Christian, you can find only 3 times in the New Testament. And in fact, Christian is not used in the really good sense when it was first tagged to disciples. But later, it became a name of honor. The point is, a person cannot be a Christian and not be a disciple. If you are a Christian, you are a disciple. This is very important. And so, I'm going to repeat myself by saying that many Christians have relegate discipleship to something for others. I'm a Christian, but I'm not a disciple. That guy, he's more active in the church. He could be a disciple, but that's not right. No member will say, I'm not a Christian. But some members may say, I'm not a disciple. So, Christians are disciples, and disciples are Christians. They are one and the same thing. No two ways about it. Matthew 28:19, go and make disciples. Acts 2:47, the Lord adds them to the church. Acts 6:7, the number of the disciples are multiplied. And only in Acts chapter 11, verse 26, that the disciples were called Christians. So, the first major misunderstanding, that Christians are not disciples. Fact is, Christian is a disciple. And if you want to be a Christian, you have to be a disciple. There is no way around it. I want to use this class to give some considerations of discipleship. That before a person becomes a Christian, he should consider discipleship carefully. It's like a person who wants to get married. You cannot rush into it without counting the cost. And so, point number one, look before you leap. Luke chapter 14, Christ says, which one of you, intending to build a tower, sit not now first and counted the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it. Ned and I goes to Chiang Mai very often, and we go to the church in the village, and along the way from our hotel to the village, we saw so many unfinished buildings. These people probably did not sit down and count the cost. You need to count the cost before you decide to be a Christian. Luke chapter 14, verse 18 tells us about people who were invited to a feast, and they all, with one consent, began to make excuses. I think it is better not to be a Christian. How could it be better not to be a Christian? But it is better not to decide to be a Christian than to be a Christian and not want to follow up and be a disciple of Jesus Christ. So very important. And John chapter 6, verse 60 tells us about some of the disciples of Jesus who no longer follow Jesus. And so it is possible that if we do not consider very carefully, that we may not be able to fulfill our discipleship. Then on the positive side, we have in Matthew chapter 13, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant man who found goodly pearls. And when he found one pearl of great price, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. And this would be the way that we become a Christian, because we have been living, we have been searching, and we now have heard the gospel, and we truly want to embrace it. This morning, just want to touch about 4 things leading to Christian discipleship, things that we are already familiar with, but since this is a 12-week course, we have the luxury to revisit it and to emphasize it. And so, what is discipleship? What are its distinguishing marks? First, a disciple is a learner. We need to abide by the words of Christ. I think sometimes it is difficult for us to understand that when the person becomes a disciple, it makes a major change of his life. From pagan gods, from all kinds of godlessness, he now wants to follow Jesus. A lot to learn, and perhaps a lot more to unlearn. So this is very important, a learner. Secondly, because he has been touched by the love of Jesus, a disciple touches others with the love of Jesus. We no longer hit back, we no longer revenge, we no longer behave like the world, but we bless those who curse us. And we do good to those that despitefully use us. John 13:35. By this, they will know that you are my disciples. If we have no love of Jesus, we are not his disciples. And the third mark of a disciple is that they bear much fruit. So very important that as we go on in our Christian life, that we become productive. Christ says that the axe is laid on the road. And if that tree is barren, then the axe will be swung on the tree, and the tree will no longer take its place. God wants us to bear fruits, not only the fruits of the Spirit, but fruits for the kingdom of God. The thing about Christian discipleship is that we need commitment. Commitment to learn, to love, and to bear fruits. Next, 3 requirements of a Christian disciple. How much? How much does it cost? Firstly, we need to deny ourselves. Meaning, we want to do things, we want to go places, we want all kinds of good stuff. To be a disciple, you put God above and you deny yourself of those things that you may seek for the greater good of Christ. Paul says, for me, to live is Christ. Not to fulfill my wants, not to fulfill my desires, but what Christ wants me to be. Secondly, we have to bear our cross. Luke chapter 14, verse 27. A lot of Christians, when bad things happen, they look at heaven and says, why me? Why not be like the Apostle Paul that says, your grace is sufficient for me? Bear our cross. Say, I have been crucified with Christ. And then it is summed up in Luke chapter 14, verse 26, to put everything beneath God in our life. This passage goes to the extreme by saying that if we do not hate, then we are not worthy of Christ. And usually commentators say that the word hate simply means to love less. In comparison to our love for Jesus, our love for self, our love for family, and our love for all these things, is pale by comparison. So, how much God calls us to single-mindedness, and we have to forsake all. Salvation is free, but it is very costly. The third thing about discipleship are the goals. And I think this is another key bottleneck of the church effort in making disciples. Because once we baptize people, very seldom we inculcate goals in their mind that they may strive and ever move forward in their Christian life. First goal of the disciple is to be like the teacher. And I need to emphasize that it is not to be like the person that shared the gospel with you, although that might not be bad, but to look at Jesus, who is perfect. Be ye imitators of me, even as I am of Christ. Follow that one who taught you the gospel, as long as this person follow Jesus. Second goal of the disciple is to make disciples. We need to train disciples to make disciples. And we need to make disciples who will be making disciples. This is our preoccupation. Those of us who have obeyed Jesus, we need to constantly point to Christ as the example, and not to draw attention to self, but to Christ. And we need to teach the converted. When a person becomes a Christian, becomes a disciple, he needs to learn. And we need to take upon ourselves the initiative. When you see someone obeying the gospel, go alongside. When you see a visitor attending church, get to know him. Teach them before they are converted. Teach them after they are converted. And we always direct them to the Bible. We always direct them to Jesus Christ. Back to the Bible, follow after Jesus, make disciples, teach the converted. And then there are rewards for a Christian disciple. I think there are right rewards and there are bad rewards. Like if we become a Christian just for money, Ananias and Sapphira. Or we become a Christian to have preeminence. 3 John verse 9, Diotrephes. Or we become a Christian just to propagate falsehood, like in Galatians 2:4, false teachers in the church. These are wrong rewards. The right reward for us as disciples is that we have peace, not like the peace of the world that is fragile. The peace that we have passeth all understanding. Also, as we follow after Jesus, we have unconditional and unchanging love of Christ. And this love casts out all fear. And Thirdly, one of the chief reasons for becoming a Christian is to enjoy life everlasting. No hope without the shed blood of Jesus Christ. So important that we are faithful. And so, make no mistake about it. As a disciple, we have rewards on this earth while being a disciple, and it gets even better when the life is over. So, in summary, the way that we can continue to be faithful unto death is to seek the Lord's strength. We cannot do it alone, no matter how strong you think that you are. Paul says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens us. And so we need to learn, we need to obey, we need to submit, and we need to serve the Lord. Next week, short lesson like this morning, we will look at the cultivation of a new disciple. In fact, we're going to spend 4 weeks on the new disciple because I believe that this is the part that the church is the weakest on. Followed by 3 weeks on the Christian disciple, 2 weeks on the what John calls the fathers of the church, and then our last class, which would be the most important class from the information that we learn through our 12 lessons. We will do an exercise on how we can profile the church at PP, where we are, where we have failed, and how we can move forward. And that will be on the last class. All 12 lesson notes are on our website. On Saturday, I tried to go to our website, but was logged out quite frequently. And so if you have trouble with ppcoc.org, go to ppcoc.co. Exactly the same thing that you will find there. And I've never ever been logged out of ppcoc.co. So that may be the preferred link. PowerPoint and videos will be posted up 1 week at a time. The PowerPoint for the upcoming class will be posted on the Wednesday before the class. So you get it before the class, and obviously we cannot have the video of the class before the class, so it will be posted after the class, probably on Wednesday. This morning, discussion questions: does my life truly reflect and define the meaning of Christian discipleship? If not, in what area of discipleship am I lacking? How can I improve? And which of the points in today's lesson you find most helpful? Share with the group, and when your group has finished, say a prayer and the class will be dismissed. Please go into your groups.